Hello and welcome to the Accelerator podcast by Accelerate Coaching. As usual, I'm Howard Bishop and here with me is Ed Miles.
Howdy.
Episode 3, setbacks and injuries. So every athlete has gone through their career and faced setbacks. I'm sure you have as well, Ed, and it's...
Far too many for me to want to talk about.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the big thing about it is not just facing what people think they face with athletes with setbacks. It's all more common things that happen in training. I know with our guest later, he's also faced some adversity with friends, sadly passing away at crucial times, as I've faced the same thing. And then I've also faced some physical setbacks in my rugby career as well. So we're going to use that as a guide to look at the following subjects. So we're going to look at physical setbacks, so by way of injury, psychological setbacks that then come along with those injuries that occur, emotional setbacks not necessarily impact your physical state, but definitely your mental state and things on and off the field, as it were, and then social setbacks. So particularly with sportsmen, when they move away from their club, they have to relocate their families and things, and what social setbacks that can happen. So on to it then. Our guest today, very special guest we've got today, Michael Hills, Doncaster Knights flanker.
We've done a bit of work with him in the past, haven't we? Helping him out with some training, helping him out with some rehab for some injuries that I'm sure he'll discuss a bit later on. Played in the Premiership for Sale. He's represented England at Sevens, and then he spent the last I think 5 or 6 seasons down at Doncaster. So we've been watching him, and he's been the captain of the team. So he's been a bit of a kind of an idol to us.
Nice to get Donny back in the fold.
Yeah, well. And he is from Donny originally as well. So he's a local lad, and he's recently been the coach of our amateur team that we play for as well, so we've kind of seen him in a different capacity.
We met him as well. He was struggling through injury quite a lot, and that's why we chose to pick him through setbacks, because he faced some quite big adversities, whether he would carry on with his career, call it a day, and we'd like to think we helped him continue his career and stay at the top of his game. Okay, so welcome, Michael. How are you doing?
Yeah, all good. Locked down with everybody else at the moment, but
yeah, it's been some
getting by.
Tough time, especially for sportsmen at this time. So we'll skip with the pleasantries. We always call Hillsy. So we'll call him Hillsy from now on, rather than Michael, so we don't all get confused. The first section, #train like an athlete. How do you think you've trained like an athlete over your career, not necessarily just impacting rugby, impacting the rest of your life and other goals you've wanted to achieve?
I think it's been a massive development over my career. Obviously, when I first joined professional rugby, and I suppose even before that, if you think about it, sort of most people nowadays will try and train like an athlete from sort of 15, 16 years old, especially in the rugby environment, whereas I sort of came through before all that. So at 15, 16, 17, 18-year-old, it was more, pretty basic, not too much access to gyms and weights, rehab, prehab. Any sports science was very lacking to begin with.
What year was it you started at Sale?
That was just nice.
2003.
2003.
Off the back of the World Cup.
Yeah,
so
started
obviously.
No, the World, obviously it was before that.
Yeah, so but then obviously I reckon, would you say that after the World Cup was when things started to kind of pick up in that aspect? Because obviously you had Clive Woodward, he brought in loads of different coaches and stuff. Like, he was a kind of first guy. He brought in like a kicking coach, an coach, an S&C coach. He brought in loads of coaches for everything. And like a lot of people say that was when a lot of sports changed everything around and had looked at it from like a holistic aspect rather than just one sport, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I definitely think the impact of Clive Woodward on rugby, especially obviously the background that I've got, was massive. Obviously, going back to the academy, when I first got there, we trained as an academy separately from the first team. So just to give you an example of what that day would have looked like as an athlete, as an academy player, the first team would have been in from 8:30 till 10. So they would have been out of the gym by the time we got there. We would have gone into the gym at 10 o'clock with a set program that was designed for us. It was very basic. You're looking at the compound lifts, real basic sort of strength work. So we train 10 till 11 in the gym, then we go home for 2 hours. By the time and then we go on the pitch at 2 o'clock and train as an academy. But the first team will have been on, so they will have been in 8:30 till 10, and then they would do whatever they did at the time, maybe some analysis or go home, and then they'd be on the pitch from about 12 till 1:30, 1:45. And as they were sort of leaving the pitch, we'd just be going out. And then we'd do an hour to an hour and a half rugby. And then that would be our day done. And Philippe Saint-André came in, and he came into Sale. And he didn't want the first team in the academy to be split because he wanted to be able to see what players could manage at what level. He felt like if you had 25 boys training separate to the first team, how could we ever figure out whether they could manage, cope, be inspired by, train alongside players like Charlie Hodgson? That sort of thing would bring you along. Yeah. So he cut all that. But with that, it meant that he didn't like the look of 25 players training with a squad of 40 first teamers. So basically our academy got cut. So we went from having 25 to 30 players down to about 16, 17. And I would say I felt like, looking back now in hindsight, professional training like a professional athlete really began for me at that point. I'll say in our first year, out of the whole academy, nobody made any appearances for the first team.
Okay.
Yeah. In the second year, when we all trained together, some players were involved in cup games or pre-season friendlies, so things like that. So by training all together, it certainly allowed academy players to be integrated more. And I would say even for things like strength and conditioning, pre-season, everything like that, it became a lot more professional for us as young players. And like I said, it then felt like we were training as professional athletes. But what I would say is, I think, like Ed's mentioned, I think the whole rugby had a massive shift at that point because things were happening at the international level. But after the World Cup, it fed down.
From Building Jerusalem, that film, it's a good insight into how rugby changed professionally after the World Cup, or on the lead up to the World Cup and after the World Cup.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, that's probably one of my favourite documentaries. That, but I think and I suppose that set us on the way then, and then things developed every year, I would say, after that.
How would you compare that first season at Sale when you were training together to, like, well, let's say you're training like as of this season just gone? Would you say that the level of the nights now is the same as Sale then, or is it higher, or what do you think?
Yeah, it's a good question. That I would say that Doncaster's now higher.
Yeah, that's just from time and development of training methods and stuff.
Yeah. I think, obviously, you can't compare the impact of training alongside quality players. Charlie Hodgson, we had Sebastian Chabal, Magnus Lund, Jason White, all these players at that point were at Sale. And it was the year after that, I think it was Philippe's second or third year that they won the Premiership. So they were building at that point.
How much impact do you think Philippe had on winning that Premiership? Like, was it everything down to his team management? Then you said obviously he's changed the team dynamic quite a lot. I think there was a lot. Or was it all in place before it started, before he came?
There was a lot of changes happening at that point. They moved from Hayward Road to Edgeley Park. Brian Kennedy was just pushing money in, because I don't think people understand the impact that the World Cup had. That 2003 winning the World Cup was huge, because then owners were like, hold on a minute, we've just won the World Cup. Like the brand of rugby is at it's at the highest it's ever going to be. Suddenly they were building this brand new training facility. Everything just went. We were training at a public gym before, where we just went into a public gym at different times. Suddenly we've got a gym on site, and so things could be managed a lot more. Like, we didn't do any prehab or rehab until we had on-site facilities where physios could get involved. Do you know what I mean? All this was just building and building over the years.
If you're looking at the Premiership rugby teams, they'll be a step above the Knights in terms of technology and stuff that they've got at their disposal. But then Premier League football must be another light year ahead of that, because obviously they've got even more money, more time, and more facilities.
Ed and I, as sports scientists, are told to consider any sports science journal 20 years old redundant, so you can't use it as an example. And then realistically, anything 10 years old, you've got a question.
I would say, living that professional life for 17 years, I totally agree with you. I think in practice, you're exactly right. You wouldn't look, whether that's coaching, whether that's playing rugby, the game of rugby, or preparing yourself, strength and conditioning side, sports science wise, you couldn't compare what we used to do to what you do now.
It goes on like a 10-year swing, and I suppose you can see that in rugby as well. And
rugby went through a massive phase of size, didn't it? Obsession with just having a big pack.
Yeah. So you look at the top 14 in France. You'd be lucky to get into a starting pack in France now in any position. So we're talking 1 to 8 if you're less than maybe 115 kilograms. but I think over there now it's becoming a bit more like NFL, where you've got the guys that are 115, 130 kilograms, but are as agile, quick, as effective as what you might say somebody at 100 kilograms is in the Premiership, because they're picking the best out now. And because they're no wage cap, there's no salary cap, they can pick what they want, and you only have to look at the NFL to see the athletes that are there, because they've got so many people to pick from. And you're only going to get the best, and that's what's happening there. Whereas you look at rugby in New Zealand, and that's more about skill level, reading of the game, that sort of side of it, rather than size. And I mean, the thing with South Africa as well is, what you've got to understand is you got to look at their genetics as well as a nation. The genetics lean to them being that big.
Around your career, who's been your top inspirations on and off the field, I suppose?
Tough question, really. I suppose to do with sport, I think some of my biggest inspirations have been my early coaches. At the raw end of it, you're playing rugby for the fun of it, before it becomes a job. I've always loved playing rugby, and I always will love playing rugby, but at some point it does become your job, and as much as you love it, you do have to accept that it does become your job. So there are certain things that you have to do, and you do because it's your job, just like you and Ed do because of the job you do. So some of my early coaches, one that always springs to mind is a guy who coached me for many years at Doncaster, Tom Martin. And then you look at people like Richard McCaw, Neil Back were always huge influences on me. Neil Back's fitness. And to be honest, going back to Neil Back, when I was younger, I was always very, very slight. I found it very difficult to put weight on. And I was always told for many years, growing probably from about 14, that I was too small to play number 7. So for years and years, I was told that, and trials, things like that, I was said, oh, that Michael Hills might be a bit too small. But I never let that put me off, because at that point, obviously, Neil Back was so prominent, me growing up, and obviously he was that exact that exact person who was too small to everybody, but yet succeeded because what his skill set was. He just made sure he's very good at what he did. I mean, I always thought, well, if I'm not the biggest guy, I'm going to have to try and be the fittest. So my impact in the game is high because I can be everywhere, rather than, right, I'm going to be in the game 5 times in the whole game and it's going to be a huge impact. Sort of my thought process was, why don't I try and be in the game 60, 70 times? And then obviously playing alongside, people like Charlie Hodgson, Richard Wigglesworth, people like who just, they had a big impact on me in reading the game of rugby and how it's not just all about how you coached. It's a bit more about learning the game yourself.
A lot of people speak really highly of Charlie Hodgson and his abilities throughout his career, obviously, and his figures speak for themselves in the game. So on that thought, is there any people that you specifically follow around social media, or you like to keep a hold of? Like Ed and I are a bit boring. We follow sports science people, but we also follow a couple of people who are training inspirations. Is there anybody, again, non-rugby and rugby, that you follow, keep an eye on?
Do you know, instead of thinking about Instagram and stuff like that, big things for me, based around documentaries, things like that. One person who's a massive inspiration to me from another sport, who I do follow, keep an eye on, watch a lot, is his documentary that just previously came out on Amazon is Andy Murray. I've always, a lot of people don't like him for whatever reason.
I've not seen that documentary, but I've heard it's unreal.
It's
another level.
A good insight to a worker's, like a real hard worker in the sports game. And I'm the same. I've always followed Michael Jordan all my life, and his documentary that's just come out as well is excellent and
very good. Yeah, that's more for me than Instagram, really. Yeah, I'm not a huge Instagrammer, but if there's a new documentary come out, I'll definitely watch it, because I think it can give you information and ideas as well. I mean, the amount of stuff I've got from documentaries towards my coaching and my leadership qualities are second to none, really. I've picked up a lot from people like Pep Guardiola, Steve Hansen, even Andy Murray. The way he treats, you'll see in the documentary, the way he treats the team around him. I don't think people understand how much of a team player he actually is, playing an individual sport.
Setbacks and in injury. So we've tagged it in with setbacks and injury, because not necessarily a mental or an emotional setback would be considered an injury, but it definitely has a detriment on your career, no matter what career you're in. And probably sports players take that a bit more seriously than any other career. So we'll start with the physical stuff. So any physical injuries that set you back that are more notable than others, Silsey?
Oh God, yeah, a few really. I think to mention from the outset really is that I don't know whether people are aware, but the biggest thing about injuries in rugby, and I'm sure this is the same for any sport, especially a team sport, is when you're injured, somebody else has to play in your position. That's where setbacks occur. So injuries, most professional sportsmen have gone through injuries, sportswomen. They go through injuries and you're confident you can get back from injuries. It's a psychological process you've learned from very young, when you get knocked down, injuries and stuff. But the biggest thing that's hard about injuries is that somebody has to play in your position. Somebody has to fill in for you in whatever capacity that is, whether that's you get an opportunity or they miss out. That's the way it works. So that can really set back your career. I'll give you a fine example of one. At Sale, when I just broke into the first team, I got, I think it was, if I remember rightly, I think it was an AC injury on the shoulder joint, AC joint. And I was out for, it was quite a bad one. I was out for a lengthy period, probably 6 to 7 weeks with it. And in that time, I think Magnus Lund was probably above me at Sale at the time, and he went away with England. And basically, somebody else then had their opportunity to play for Sale when I was injured. And when I came back from injury, I never got that opportunity again. And that actually led to me leaving the club, which was tough to take, because then you work really hard to get back, but then when you come back, if they're playing well and they've taken their opportunity, that's life, that's rugby. If they're playing well, you then don't get that opportunity again. People think about injury setbacks being, I'm injured, I'm not training or whatever, but
not playing in that.
It's more about,
or whatever it is
somebody going to come in and play well, and there's a lot of anxiety around that as well. I've seen many players really struggle with that, worry. You can go down a dark hole while you're injured if you think that could really affect your progress and your position really at the club or whatever sport you're in. They're huge. They're huge setbacks.
That's not necessarily what people realise as well, is that they just think, I've been overpassed. Say it was a normal job in inverted commas, but say you think you've been overpassed for a promotion, but you don't know what that person's done. They've taken that opportunity. It can have those different detriments on your mental health, as well as what you've set out to achieve in the first place. What treatment and rehab techniques have you come across over the time that you've enjoyed, and then maybe necessarily some you haven't enjoyed? And is there anything?
It's funny because
you think is your main recovery method or whatever?
I think it's funny because I've gone through, just like we said before, there's been a lot of things over my career that have come in, gone out, people have used, people don't use. I mean, one that really stands out to me, which early on in my career used to be used a lot for injuries, was ultrasound. You used to have a lot of ultrasound machines that
I'm not a big fan of ultrasound.
Used constantly for, and I would say the last 10 years of my career, I haven't seen one used at all. Yeah. But yet the first 4 or 5 years of my career, that's all seemed to be done. Like physios just stood next to you, rubbing this blooming ultrasound machine all over you. I'm a big believer in. I think the biggest thing I've learned is, as a sportsman, is you need to know your own body. You need to know exactly what works for you. And I'm not saying it's difficult, because when you're 19, 20 years old, you don't know that. You just don't know what works for you. And then as you get older and older, you learn, and there is no substitute for time doing things, whether that's rehab, prehab, stretching, strengthening. You've just got to you've got to take the time to do it. I mean, you guys, when I first met you, Howard, you know what sort of place I was in at that point. I'd had a very bad hamstring tear, followed by a pec tear, so I was out for a long period of time. And
we also wanted to work with what you felt comfortable with, so we wanted to give you options, so that if we'd have said you need to do this and you didn't like it, we'd have lost you straight away. So it was managing your expectations as much as anything, and listening to your body and finding out what works best, and sort of trial and error, really. That's the best way to.
Yeah, I think a lot of people as well, they think that for most injuries, like let's use the example of a broken wrist. If you break your wrist, there's like a set. The doctors say, this is your pathway to recovery. 6 weeks, whatever. You're getting put off after this amount of time, and then after that you need to do this, and then by this time you'll be good to go, and you'll be fine. And people think it's just this. The progress is just this straight line to the end result.
Yeah.
Whereas in reality, the progress is up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, and it's never a straight run to the end goal of getting better. And that's what I think ties into the psychological aspect of it as well. People expect to just be able to recover, but then when they get setbacks in their recovery, it's dealing with them and understanding that is normal.
they want to put a number to it. So they go, when am I going to be fixed, doctor? And he'll say 6 to 8 weeks. They ignore the 8 weeks part. They hear the 6 weeks. They think I'm going to be fixed in 6 weeks.
And it's tough in pro sport as well, especially in rugby, because obviously if you're a key player in the team, the coach obviously wants you back 6 weeks, not 8. Because obviously those 2 weeks without you, it could make a difference. So obviously there's a lot of pressure coming from outside, from alternate sources to that as well.
That comes into the emotional part of it as well. That you don't want to let the team down or let the coach down or whatever. So
that's another thing. As you become more experienced, you realise that that you know as well. You feel your own body. You feel what's right and what's not. And if you're told it's a 6 to 8 week injury and you get to 6 weeks, you know whether you're ready or not, and you can go, I'm not ready. But then you've got if you go to a coach in your 30s and go, no, I'm not ready, the coach will be like, right, well, how long? And you'll be like, probably going to be another week or two, and he'll walk away. But when you're 21 years old and he's been told it's 6 weeks, and a 21-year-old's trying to say, the pressures are massive, and a lot of the time they don't say because they don't feel comfortable, and then the coach gets frustrated when they lose them for another 12 weeks. It's it's hard for a coach, and it's hard for a player, and it's hard for physios and therapists.
That's where
team sports scientists.
Team sports are quite unique, especially rugby, football. I suppose they're really more higher paid ones. Maybe some individual sports like tennis as well, but especially the press don't see is that the coach is under a lot of pressure to get that £1 million signing on the field and get the fans to see him. And if they keep saying he's not ready or he's not fit, then there's going to be the alarm bells from all over, from management and from fans and everything, isn't it? So it's difficult. It is difficult.
Yeah, I think I can't remember who it was, but a pro rugby player said something. He was talking about like injury, and he says that he's never ever felt 100% fit since he started playing rugby, because he's always kind of come back to training a little bit early, not quite there, and then obviously never be able to fully recover. So then there's always like a little niggle, like a little shoulder twinge, little knee twinge, something like that.
Was it Hilsey? Because he's been a broken man for a lot of seasons.
Yeah. I honestly, I can't remember the last time I've felt 100%. In fact, I would say that would be pointless to even try and suggest that I've ever played 100% fit.
How do you feel now, not doing any rugby for like 8 weeks or whatever, and like different training and like not as much impact through the joints and stuff? How do you feel now compared to where you were like a couple of months ago?
It's a weird one, really, because I feel rested. I feel rested, but then I've actually trained quite a lot because I like training. But what I have enjoyed, is being responsible for my own training. It's a tough one, really, but I don't think I feel as good as I thought I would. I went out for a run the other day, and my knees and my calves were absolutely killing me. And I was like, I don't think I've ever felt them that bad. I've kept busy. I've done, I can't remember. I looked at my thing the other week. I think I've gone roughly, going off my Apple Watch, I think I've gone from 39 sessions a month down to about 18 or 19. So I've almost halved in terms of, and that'll be a mixture of weights, cardio, stuff like that. But I think I've probably halved how much training I'm actually doing.
That's that holistic approach that me and Ed always try to hammer home, is that no matter how holistic you think you've been, you probably haven't hit every component of fitness, because the list is endless. So it goes back into that. And
there's not enough time in the week to train everything. You mentioned, well, obviously there's a lot of anxiety that comes with injury. Obviously, you don't know when you'll be playing again. You don't know if you'll sometimes be playing for the same club again, because obviously if you don't get that opportunity to play again, you might get deemed surplus to requirements. So what's the method that you might be multiple methods that's developed over your career? How do you deal with the kind of anxiety associated with getting an injury and the worries and the things, the bad thoughts that go through your head? What do you do to kind of not let them get you down and be able to come back from the injury successfully?
Biggest thing I learned or tried to stick with is that once you're injured, the best thing to do is concentrate on getting back training. If you're in the middle of the season, you're going to see somebody else playing your position. There's nothing you can do about that. That hasn't happened because you've played poorly. That's a whole different setback when you get dropped, which is another psychological element. But in terms of injury setbacks, you've got to just be strong and focused on getting back training. That's the first thing. That's what I always did. It would be, what am I going to do, and what's the plan to get back training? That sort of gives you a sort of ladder that you're almost going on. When you feel like you've moved from the physios to the strength and conditioning coaches in terms of that area of your body, and as you progress through that, you sort of ticking boxes in your own head.
Yeah.
And
so you're saying that the way you've been able to deal with it is the process put in place by the club of that kind of the like stages to return to play stages that they provide, and you think that that's helped you like break it down in your head rather than it being a big long goal, if you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think it's key to be really part of that process. I don't think you've got to be strong enough to be part of it. You've got to go, right, I went and did this, and feedback, go back to the physio and said, right, I did this and it was way too hard, or I did this and it was way too easy. Because if you just go by everything they say, you might either work too hard, too less. You've got to be part of the process.
What about when you're out of your own country? So, like, for your example would be when you were playing sevens, like how much pressure did England sevens put on you to get back fit or whatever? I suppose like goes with players who were playing abroad, the same thing.
The weekend, you might go away for 2 weeks, so you might have 3 or 4 days training, tournament, fly to the next place, 3 or 4 days training, tournament, then back to your club. So while you were in New Zealand, if you've got a slight niggle, bear in mind you've only got 12 players there, then the pressure for you to get back on the pitch is far more intense. So you may play with a niggle, you may play slightly less. So your process needs to be a little bit different, and you've got to psychologically.
Is it more kind of pain management to get you in the right frame of mind to play and not feel bogged down by this niggle and let it restrict your performance? It's kind of like an immediate response rather than a long-term response.
Yeah, get you on the pitch, get you playing, and we'll figure it out when you get back.
Deal with it afterwards.
But that's the nature of it. It certainly was at the time, because by the time you've flown somebody out to New Zealand, to replace you, and they've got over the jet lag, the tournament might be finished. So sometimes you would obviously play with less players. So obviously it's 12 in your squad, but if you got 2 injuries, you might just have to try and survive the tournament with only 10 players.
Yeah, I've heard stories of like some teams get like 6 injuries and then they've got like 1 person on bench or something, and then they get another couple of injuries in the last couple of games and they're playing with 6.
I suppose it's receptive on the coach as well. So if it's a coach has got a good mentality, they'll worry about player welfare first rather than impressing the fans or directors or whatever. But I heard it going back to documentaries that the class of '92, talking about Alex Ferguson, Ronaldo said that when his dad died, Alex Ferguson went, "Go home, take as much time as you need. Your mental well-being," and this is when Ronaldo was the best player in the world, and he was only 20, and take as much time as you need. We need you. You don't need us. So it depends on if the manager's got good man management, then I suppose it helps the recovery process as well.
The impact that it has outside of rugby on your family, whether that's your girlfriend, your wife, your children, and or your parents if you're still living at home. Getting injured in professional sports is a big thing, and it does impact. You do bring it. You try not to, but you do bring it home with you. You've got a lot of frustration, and you know it is tough. It's tough to be injured, and there's no doubt about it that you need a supportive base when you get home. And I think if your family can support you on that, it certainly makes the ride a little bit easier. And since I know not everybody has kids, but since I had my son, it certainly makes life easier if you're injured, if you're around, children and things like that, because they see things so simply.
Yeah,
they don't.
I've heard some people in like interviews and stuff. They said that having a couple of kids at home or a child at home is the injury's kind of been good. They've looked at the good side of being injured because they get to spend more time at home with the kid, get to see a bit more of them growing up and stuff, rather than like having to travel around all over the country or all over the world if they're international or whatever.
If you get an injury towards the end of your career as well, that might have an impact on how you view the rest of your career. Say you could sign a 1 year contract, but then spending more time with your child on that tail end of the injury, it might make you want to stay at home a little bit more. It's interesting. So going on to the emotional bit, but the only one we haven't really talked about is, you might not have come across it, but I'll give you an example. Is one of my friends, he plays for Birmingham football, and Harry Redknapp signed him. And then when Harry left, he was almost cast to one side then. And obviously that's a setback psychologically. And you might feel that you're physically fit, but it's not what that manager wants or that coach wants. So is there anything that you've come across that way, where you've not been in favour per se?
Yeah, gosh, I think it happens to. I think you'd be a very lucky person to go through your career and not have a coach not maybe understand or believe in sort of what you bring to the team. I've certainly had that before. It is hard. Like there are a lot of emotions, as a sportsman, and like I said, setbacks of not being picked, or like you said, with your friend getting pushed out and not getting a look in. They're really tough. They are really tough, because the thing with sport is that you might be feeling it, but everybody else is cracking on, because you might be getting pushed to the side, but they might be getting picked every week, and that team might be winning, and they feel good about it, and you're feeling bad about it. And it is tough, but you've got to try and do your best to, I suppose, in the situation that it happened to me, I did suffer for a while with it, because I knew in a similar situation, a new coach came in, and I'd been regular player consistently, and then the new coach came in, and then it was made clear to me in pre-season that I wasn't going to be playing that much with this coach, and I was still quite young in my career as well. It's not something that's happened to me recently, but it was important for me, after I got over the initial emotions of disappointment, self-esteem, obviously it hits your self-esteem quite hard. But then after that, my sole focus was to prove my worth, both to myself and to him as a coach.
Throughout your career, have you had anything? We've spoke about kind of things like personal performance and injuries and stuff, but is there anything that's like a team setback, so where you've lost a game that you really needed to win, and then how have you recovered from that? Like an example recently, like obviously England in the World Cup final, everyone kind of expected them to win, because obviously there's all the stats like South Africa have never the team that's lost the game in the pools never won the World Cup. So there's all the pressure that England were going to win. They're beating the All Blacks, who were the favourites, and then they lose in the final. Like, have you ever had anything like similar to that kind of thing and have to come back after a devastating loss or performance to then have to then pick yourself up and go again?
I think I haven't had anything at that level, certainly not.
World Cup, yeah.
I've definitely had many games that you go into where you should not lose that game. There's no way you should lose that game, and you lose it.
Well, I'll give you an example. You tell us how you felt emotionally and psychologically after when the final against Bristol. Obviously, that final was pretty special, the away leg especially. So how did you feel walking off that, thinking that we probably were the better team, especially on the day of the away final? And then how do you come back again from that and move into it?
I think that
was probably a bit of an anomaly, because it was such a good performance to finish on. It probably spurs you on more to go again in the next season because of what you were capable of last season.
Yeah, I think that's a total different mindset to sort of what Ed gave as an example, because I think the emotions we felt when we came off the pitch in Doncaster for the first leg were that we'd been outplayed and we didn't perform well as a team. So certainly then when we went to Bristol and played so well, I think, like Ed said, I think the fact that we'd won and played rugby in the way we did, I think there was a feeling among the team of pride, really. Pride. I think that was the biggest thing I would say.
That's good, because though, to take, obviously, nearly every motivational speaker will talk about finding the good in bad and always be positive and things. And that's really good to hear that. But that was a life-changing thing for a lot of those players, to do that and then come off a really tough moment to then have a lot of positives coming away, that you were happy with your performances and finding positive.
Yeah, I think it was hugely positive from that instance, and I think more the week before was where boys really felt it, because I think we almost felt that night that we'd lost, even though we had another game to go, and we did. I mean, in hindsight now, we lost it in the first game, obviously, because if it had been 3 or 4 points that we'd lost with at Doncaster, then the Bristol final at their place would have been even closer. And you just don't know which way that would have gone. But because we lost by 20 odd points, it was such a deficit to make up. It was difficult.
On the flip side, so when a couple of years ago when you played London Irish in the semi-final, but then I think it came out before the games had even played that Doncaster weren't going to promote. How did you? Well, did you struggle to motivate yourself to play or train that week? I don't know. Did you play both those games?
Yeah, that was tough actually, because for whatever reasons,
that's like a setback outside of your control, because it's like, even though obviously you want to go out and win every time, it's been taken out of your hands, that even if you win, you're not going to get anything out of it, if you know what I mean. That is an interesting one.
Yeah, that was real tough. That was a tough one for the boys to take, to be honest. There was a lot of mixed emotions around it, and like you said, it was a setback at the time. And I think really, like you said, we spoke as players, and really, like you said, we worked on the fact that we had no control over that. That wasn't, at the end of the day, our job is to play rugby and play at the best of our ability. And that's sort of what we hung on to there. That decision had been made for whatever reasons. And to be honest, let's look at it, probably the right reasons.
Yeah.
In hindsight, the club wasn't in a position to go for promotion. We'd seen the disaster of London Welsh and where they are now, and fair play to London Welsh, they're working their way back. But the people above us in more positions understand it a bit more than we do. What we understand is playing rugby, and that's what we had to hang our hat on.
Well, that was basically the first point of the social one. I put it as off-field impact, but it's more like political setback, isn't it? That's thing that happens.
So do you think that after that, then the boys came back together, and then it kind of bonded you as a group, or did you feel like it was a bit like it fractured a few members away, or what effect did it have on the team and individuals?
Yeah, it was difficult really, because I felt like some people understood the decision, and I understood the decision. I'll be honest, straight away when I read it, yes, I was disappointed, and yes, I was emotional about it, but I understood the decision because I was at London Welsh, not when it all happened to them, but I knew a lot of people around there, and I knew the impact that what they did had on it. So I understood totally the decisions that were being made. But not everybody did, because not everybody's, understands or thinks like that. And some people had come to Doncaster knowing that they were an ambitious club who got to the final the previous year with a chance of getting promoted, the best chance Doncaster ever had. So they'd come to the club with that ambition, and suddenly it had been taken away from them. And they'd worked hard all year for that. So it was about understanding that not everybody would see it the same way. And we made that clear. We made that clear when we spoke as players. We said, look, it's okay to feel whatever way you want to feel about this. If you're angry because you don't understand it, that's absolutely fine. But we don't have control over that. They've made those decisions in the best interest of the club. And we're players of that club. So
you're here. The players are here for a short time. The club's got to be here for a long time. So that's the thing. So you mentioned it just before we actually started recording, but I've been in a similar situation as well. Not quite as daunting as this, but how much did it bond you at the nights when Ian died as well, and then the setback you went through that socially as a team and things like that?
Yeah, that was a real tough time for us. I think you never expect anything like that, and I think at the time we felt like we dealt with it really well. We felt like we did everything right, and I'm not saying we didn't do anything wrong. We did everything we could, and we all stuck together, and we talked about it as players, and it never became a taboo subject. We did everything right. We never stopped talking about him or anything. Yeah. But I don't think we realised the impact it would have on rugby.
Yeah.
I don't think we won a game after that. I think we lost all our games till the end of the season. After that, we may have won one, maybe. And it's funny because we all sat down pretty much every week, and we'd be like, "Do you know what? We feel good this week. We trained well, yet when it came to game time, we just couldn't put it together." And in hindsight now, maybe we just didn't give it the impact it would have. A big catalyst for it was, so Ian sadly passed away on a Tuesday. We had a weekend off that week, so we didn't obviously play that week. We had some time off, and we came back in and we went away to Cornish Pirates the following weekend, so almost 11, 12 days later. And I can't tell you how motivated the players were for that game. It was like, we're going to do this for Ian. And we trained like absolute animals all week. I can't tell you, like, the boys were on absolute fire. Yeah. And we went away to Pirates, who were a fantastic team. They've been developing so much over the last few years. They're getting better and better, and they're not an easy team to beat. We went down there and we played really well. We played well as a team. We dug in against a very good Pirates team, and we were winning the game. And we went into overtime, and we lost it in the 83rd minute or whatever, and we lost by 1 point. And that just literally, I remember that feeling that day. I've never been so low on a rugby pitch, even lower than some of the losses. You know, that's the lowest I've been because it meant so much to us to win that game. And I think the impact of that was massive. Losing that game that sort of cemented the emotions, I think. And again, I don't know if we'd have won that game, whether we'd have gone on and it would have spurred us on. I mean, you look at teams like it was Munster, wasn't it, when Foley passed away?
Oh yeah.
It gelled them, and they went on to have a fantastic season.
Yeah.
It didn't work. It didn't quite work out for us that way,
No.
and I don't know if that game was a catalyst for that for us. But the players, obviously, then we had to get on a bus for 9 hours on the way home.
Awful place to go to.
It was just so difficult as a team. But again, you live and learn from things like that. And but again, nothing we could do. It was out of our hands.
Got to the last section we call the finish line. So we've got 20 quick fire questions, Hillsy. Answer them as honestly and as quick as you can. You good to go?
I'm ready when you are.
All right. Favourite food?
Chicken fajitas.
Strong.
Nice, yeah.
Best teammate. I want 2 answers. I want 1 as best rugby teammate in terms of a player, and I want 1 as the best on the pitch.
Right. Best teammate. All right, I'll go Colin Quigley. Just an all-round good guy. And then best on the steam. Oh God, I've had too many of them. I'm just easy answer for me now. It's just come in. Jonathan Mills from London Welsh. So he's my captain at London Welsh. He's been at Sale. He's now actually head coach at Roslyn Park. So
nice.
Yeah, I'm sure those guys have got a very big social section.
You maybe said it already, but worst injury?
My worst injury was breaking my kneecap.
Oof.
Awkward one.
Squats or deadlifts?
100% squats.
Weights or cardio?
Weights.
Favourite holiday destination?
Oh, this is a tough one. Been on some cracking holidays recently. I'm going to say Dubai because it has everything.
Good one. It's a good one. Starter or dessert?
I've got to go dessert.
Coffee or tea?
Neither. Don't drink any hot drinks.
No hot drinks.
So I'll have to go for water. No, not really. But yeah, I don't drink coffee or tea, so I'll have to say neither.
Well, we'll move on from that. That's really weird.
That's like a guy who doesn't drink alcohol, isn't it? You just don't trust him.
Yeah.
He doesn't drink hot drinks. I don't trust him. Do you know what's even weird? Do you know what's even weird? My wife doesn't drink hot drinks either. Neither of us.
So you haven't got a kettle?
Yeah, we have for guests.
Oh, right.
But we don't drink them. We don't.
I bet your mug collection's awful.
We've got I think we've got 2 mugs.
Terrible. Anyway.
Moving on.
Sand or snow?
Sand.
This is a tough one. Proudest achievement in sport or life?
I'll do both of them. Proudest moment in life is obviously becoming a dad. In sport, probably representing my country. I'd probably say England Sevens because that's classed as a senior cap.
Nice.
Person or people who train the hardest in the teams you've been in?
Top trainer. I'm just trying to think.
Didn't have this one down for a stumbling block.
I know, yeah.
It would be if I was training every day now. It'd be easy, but we haven't been at training for 9-10 weeks. I can't.
What
I can
about
barely remember.
surely?
I can barely remember people's names.
You were at
Been
Sale when
that long.
Chabal was there. Surely Chabal's got to be up there for top training. He's got an insane rig.
No, he's got to be a lazy man. He loves it fromage.
The total opposite, Ed. Total opposite.
Yeah, I see him being a lazy man. Charlie Hodgson must have worked hard.
Yeah, Charlie, a lot of kicking. But I suppose. Oh no, easy. Top trainer Andrew Sheridan. Easy.
Oh,
easy.
he's a monster.
Easy. Honestly, I reckon to try and stop him training was an issue. He'd be like, I'm doing a 300 kilogram deadlift the day before the game. So yeah,
Brilliant.
I would say probably Andrew Sheridan just trained so hard, just a real hard dude. Yeah, he was up there.
Favourite sporting moment other than in rugby?
I would say Andy Murray first winning Wimbledon.
That was good. I watched that in the States, and I was the only person who cheered when it happened, and everybody else looked at me like gone out.
Yeah, we watched it as a whole family in my mum's house. It was a big deal for the Hills family. That
Favorite type of training?
I thought these would be easier. I would say swimming fitness.
It's a good one.
To be fair, you are like a fish. If you had to play another sport other than rugby, what would it be?
Tennis.
Now you can see that coming a mile off now.
Yeah. Well, I thought you were going to say tennis or swimmer.
I couldn't be a swimmer. That's far too much time in a pool on your own. I don't know how they manage that.
You get to eat loads of calories though, so you know.
Yeah.
In recovery, golf or yoga?
Yoga. I can't stand golf.
Are you a cat or a dog man? You're going to be weird and say neither, aren't you? Oh yes,
I did want to say neither, but I'm going to say cat.
Good choice.
I grew up with cats, but I have had a dog, and I'm never having another dog.
Down the pub or at the club?
At the club.
Standard. Guilty pleasure that's weird and you don't really like admitting.
Got a few. I'm just trying to think which one's best to say. All right, I'll go with this one. Rom-coms. Massive guilty pleasure.
Love a rom-com.
But especially the classics like 10 Things I Hate About You, She's All That, all those ones. The classics.
Excellent.
Love Actually.
Brilliant. Love Actually is class.
Your favourite way to relax or de-stress?
Rom-coms.
Watching films.
Rom-coms.
Yeah.
Not necessarily rom-coms, but I can switch off when I watch films.
Who's your dream training buddy?
I'm gonna have to say Andy Murray. I think we'd have a good crack.
What would you be training? Like in the gym or?
Forearms.
I don't know. I think we'd just be competitive. He seems like competitive, and he has a laugh. I think we'd come up with something to compete against each other.
Fair enough.
We want some good answers, so thanks very much for that.
Some interesting answers there, I think. Some good ones, but I don't think I can ever trust a man who doesn't like hot drinks and only has 2 mugs in his kitchen.
Yeah.
It's a bit weird. Yeah, but very interesting chat anyway with him. So
yeah, it's good to him to divulge on the professional world's good and maybe not so good areas of facing adversity. Thank you all for listening, and find us at accelerate-coaching.com or at accelerate_coaching on Instagram. Please submit any questions or comments you've got below. If you've got anything for Michael, we'll make sure we get that to him. I know he's not very social media savvy, so we can get any questions to him if you do wish. I've been Howard Bishop, and you can find me at Bish1990 on Instagram, and Ed
M Performance.
So at Ed M Performance on Instagram.
Yep.
Thank you very much, guys. Thanks for listening.